Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here, and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. And today we're going to be looking at the new 8.2.5 cinematics. All three of them, at least I'm pretty sure there's only three of them. Well, there's technically four, but I don't really care about the Tsar Fang Loyalist one, because it's just, oh, we're going to honor Tsar Fang. Great. If you haven't played 8.2.5 and finished the war campaign, and if you actually haven't seen these cinematics, this is going to be a pretty huge spoiler for you. But I promise you, you're going to want to stay till the end, because the last cinematic we're looking at is probably the most important one. So we're going to go through all three. I'm going to break a couple things down. We're going to talk about them. And hope you guys enjoy. So the first one that we're going to look at is the Tsar Fang War cinematic. The cinematic finale. It's one of the in-game cinematics. Then we're going to look at the main one with Tsar Fang and Sylvanas. And then finally, we're going to look at Sylvanas' independent cutscene. So let's go ahead and start this one. So basically, this is after the war campaign is reaching its conclusion. And basically, the forces of the Alliance, the leaders of the Alliance, are going to meet up with some of the leaders of the Horde.
Anduin, Sylvanas' actions have threatened us all. And day by day, her power grows. If our world is to survive, we must strike while we still can.
One thing I want to throw out there just immediately. Go onto retail and look at your Heart of Azeroth and read what the flavor text on your Heart of Azeroth says. It says, and I quote, "Living symbol of hope, born by the champions of a dying world. The fate of Azeroth will be shared by all her children." So when when Tsar Fang says, if our planet is to survive, if our world is to survive, we have to get this taken care of.
Meet with me, and we will speak.
So few.
How many can you provide?
Enough for one final assault.
So they're talking about teaming
if
up.
that fails, we're done. If we end her reign, what kind of war chief will you be?
So obviously Anduin showing concern.
The horde I joined was birthed in blood, tainted by corruption. The road that led to the Dark Portal was long and wide, paved with the bones of innocence.
So if you didn't know, the original Orcish Horde was developed and kind of curated by the Burning Legion. They were tainted, corrupted by Fel, obviously. Yeah, the path of glory that led to the Dark Portal was actually paved out of the skulls and dead corpses of Draenei. So it's kind of fucked up.
We called it the Path of Glory. That was the great lie upon which the Horde was founded.
As a side note, Cho'Gall used to believe that the Horde's destiny was to bring about the apocalyptic end of all things, otherwise known as the Hour of Twilight. And it is possible that, given what Sylvanas has been doing lately, that the pursuit of such an act is not necessarily completely abolished from the destiny of the Horde. But given that Sylvanas does what she does in this next cinematic, we'll have to see.
That anything we did was honorable. Thrall, Rosen, they were not the true heirs to Blackhand's bloody legacy. Sylvanas Windrunner is.
No. No, this is the Horde. Led by you. Someone who has
Honor. I've never known honor. They deserve more.
See, I get what Tsar Fang's going for here, but can we stop the pity party here? This motherfucker led the battle, the Gates of Encourage. This motherfucker led the charge against the Scourge in Northrend. Why is Tsar Fang still sitting around pretending like he's never known honor? What, because he hasn't had his honorable death? Fang's got it backwards. Fang thinks that you have to die honorably in order to be honorable. It's like such a fucked up, twisted way to look at honor, in my opinion, if you ask me. But it's funny because there's characters like Sylvanas that say things like honor means nothing to a corpse, Fang. So it's rather than believing in the idea of living honorably and committing honorable deeds, Fang seems to have pretty much always had this focus on dying honorably. And it's such an interesting, I don't know, it's so weird to me.
But the Horde is doomed to be shackled by the chains of the past.
The Horde has no exclusive claim to regrets. Arthas, Dalen, the ghosts of the past haunt us as well.
We could not fill the chasm between the Horde and Alliance if we labored 1,000 years. You know this.
Then what are we fighting for?
A little bit of foreshadowing there because basically, so here's the thing. I've speculated in the past that Sylvanas was doing things that would intentionally bring the Alliance and the Horde together. And thus far, whether it's by her intention or not, it's actually working. That is happening. The things that Sylvanas is doing are certainly bringing us together. This is a perfect example of that. But a little bit of foreshadowing, obviously, for what is to come for Fang. Because as he mentions, there's no way that just by, laboring to try to mend this great divide between the Alliance and the Horde, that would ever be achievable, even in 1,000 years. It's sort of almost to foreshadow what is to come.
Soldiers, on your feet!
Start breaking camp immediately!
Lord Fang?
Zakan, where is our home?
Orgrimmar?
Not our city. Our home.
Azeroth.
And ours?
Azeroth.
Right now, there are only two forces in this world that matter. One bent on harming our world.
And one that will protect her.
So, what are we doing?
Breaking the cycle.
So, great cinematic, right? I like this little in-game cinematic. Okay. What I'm about to tell you, I don't think that Blizzard is necessarily being as direct as some viewers of this video may perceive what I'm about to say. But what he's saying here is our home is Azeroth, right? Our home is something that we will fight to protect. Azeroth, the world. And don't forget that inside of Azeroth, the world, apparently sleeps the most powerful titan in the universe. Okay, let's not forget that. Now, if you were to ask me, the most powerful titan is more than likely, and I'm just going to continue to say this because it's what I've said in my previous videos, got to keep that consistency. The creator god of the universe, I think Azeroth is the titan of light and creation. And I think that she is basically the mother of all the other titans. And I think that she birthed a shadow. And I think that shadow is a destruction and uncreation, and I think that his name is Argus. And I will again say that I think that Azerite, this blue and gold substance, is the combination of not just Azeroth's blood, but likely Argus's blood as well. I have many videos that dive deeper into this, and I would seriously urge you to check them out in the description down below. But what he says here, there are only two forces, right now, there are only two forces in this world that matter. One bent on harming our world, and those who will fight to protect it. Now, obviously, this is talking about the divide between all of these characters right here, and Sylvanas, pretty much independent, on the other side. But I think there's an underlying theme that's happening here. Because remember, Sargeras took a giant sword imbued with what I think is the power of Argus, death and shadow and uncreation, and stabbed it into our planet. Okay? There is a force that matters a lot, bent on harming our world, causing our world to die. And again, I'll kind of bring attention back to the flavor text of the heart of Azeroth, a living symbol of hope, born by the champions of a dying world, the fate of Azeroth will be shared by all her children. That is to say that perhaps if Azeroth dies, we all die too. But here's the thing, is that as I've mentioned and as devs have reiterated and reinforced, death is not the end in the World of Warcraft universe. There is another plane which you may travel to in death, and it is called the Shadowlands. So regardless of whether or not these Shadowlands leaks end up being true, I will remain resolute that we will eventually and inevitably go to the Shadowlands, because we will eventually and inevitably die. However, this boy right here, King Anduin Wrynn, is kind of the balancing and counteractive force to that. And the reason is because while Sylvanas clearly has some kind of hard-on for death and is doing something in the name of death and pursuing all of this stuff with her weird little secret motives with death, which will be further reinforced as we continue through this video, Anduin is basically a living beacon of hope, a mortal beacon of potentially the most powerful force in the universe, that being hope. I'll use the quote from Kalia Menethil once again, where after she was resurrected, she says, "Where there is hope, you make room for healing. For all things that are possible, and some that are not." Basically, what that says is hope allows for certain things that should otherwise be impossible to happen. Hope is basically God mode in World of Warcraft. And this boy right here is a walking beacon of it. And as we continue, you'll notice that Sylvanas seems hell-bent on trying to kill hope. It's very important because the reason for that is hope is one of the only things that stands in Sylvanas' way. The only thing that she doesn't realize is that she can't destroy it. She has to figure out how to work around it in order to accomplish her goals. And I'm not so sure that Sylvanas is even capable of feeling hope. And if she is, I think it will be this boy right here who provides that to her, gives her some kind of hope. But anyway, one bent on protecting it, one or on destroying it or harming it, one that will protect her, talking about Azeroth, her. So remember that there's really a grand thing that's going on here in regards to our planet. So let's go to the big boy cinematic. So first off, what a great shot, dude. The Gates of Orgrimmar in high resolution, dude. That is awesome. You can see all the Horde gathered on the left and all the Alliance gathered on the right. And it has been quite some time since we had to do this, hasn't it? The last time that this ever happened was when we fought Garrosh. But as Blizzard has said, what we experienced with Garrosh is not what we would experience with Sylvanas. So while this may look like a Siege of Orgrimmar 2.0, of course that is not going to happen. We have Anduin, Saurfang, and Thrall out in the front here. Man, Saurfang is old.
Varrock, it's time.
So,
Those who defend Orgrimmar are Horde as well.
most of these are Forsaken. While they may be Horde, I am seeing pretty much only Forsaken up there. And we got some Forsaken banners as well, so that makes sense. So while they are saying that they're Horde, even back as far back as the initial faction description for Forsaken in Classic, kind of says that they really don't care about the Horde, and they pretty much are only using the Horde as a facade to accomplish their own dark deeds. So, yeah.
Our brothers and sisters. These warriors have sworn to fight. For you. Many lives will be lost. Or perhaps just one.
I fucking love these cinematics, man. The emotional tension that they draw up is so good, especially with just little one-liners like that from Fang. And here's the thing. Throughout this whole war campaign, Sylvanas she's made some mistakes, right? Quite a few. And in Before the Storm, she made a very big mistake that we'll touch on here in a little bit, that being Kalia Menethil. But part of me has to wonder if Sylvanas kind of knew that this was coming, because she kind of knew that pretty much everything else was coming, right? It would seem, especially if you play the the Sylvanas loyalist side during the war campaign, that Sylvanas was pretty much always aware of what was happening, of what was happening and what was to come, and she kind of was letting it unfold in a very interesting way. And that's part of what led me to believe that characters like Bane were never really in danger, because if Sylvanas wanted Bane Bloodhoof dead, he would have been dead. So this what's about to happen right here, I'm curious if Sylvanas had some kind of idea that this may be coming.
Sylvanas Windrunner! I challenge Makora!
So good, dude. Okay. When I didn't play through the 8.2.5 campaign, I couldn't wait. So I just watched the cinematic. And when Fang said that, listen, I'm not a big Fang guy. I've supported Sylvanas through the whole thing because I think there's more at play here. When he said that, my fucking stomach just dropped. And my fucking eyes started to well up with tears a little bit, and I was like, dude, no way Fang just challenged Sylvanas Windrunner to a one-on-one. Because to me, there's no question. There is no question who wins that fight. Absolutely none. And what a cool shot, dude.
A traitor leading traitors.
So notice the shadows kind of swirling around Sylvanas' fist that are making whispering kind of noises. She's kind of hard, like they're kind of abating her hand. And they are purple and black. It looks actually pretty similar to an extent. The shadow that we see represent N'Zoth when it's released and comes up and interacts with Ashara after the fight. But this is a really cool shot right here. All three of these heroes standing together. But watch what the shadow does here.
Traitors. Why should I accept your challenge?
And then as she says that, why should I accept your challenge, and clenches her fist, the shadow completely dissipates, right? But you can kind of hear the whispering. An interesting thing Sylvanas says right here is a traitor leading traitors. Why should I accept your challenge? So she's basically like, you're a traitor. I think what she's alluding to here is you're a traitor, which is dishonorable. You're leading what she considers to be other traitors. I don't think Anduin's really a traitor, and Thrall was basically off doing his own thing, so I'm not so sure that he's necessarily a traitor. But all these Horde forces behind them, maybe that's what she's referring to. But I think she's saying, you know, I already consider you dishonorable, not that Sylvanas gives much of a shit about honor, but why should I accept a challenge for an honorable duel from someone who's a fucking traitor? I think that's what Sylvanas is trying to say. Now, whether or not you agree with Sylvanas' notion that Fang is a traitor is another question, because based on what Sylvanas has done, while technically what's going on here is treasonous and traitorous, it seems a little bit justified, right? So,
You want to make me suffer.
and a little smirk on Sylvanas' face. I kind of like that, but you can tell, especially with how Sylvanas acts throughout the rest of the cinematic. Sylvanas has got some anger problems, and she has a hard time masking it. One thing to note, she did come out here without any arrows in her quiver and without her bow. See, her quiver is empty and did not have her bow. So it's interesting she would choose not to use that, but instead opt into using 2 daggers in order to fight one of the most mighty orc warriors in the history of World of Warcraft. And as Thrall says,
Brother, you cannot win. My old friend, We don't get to hide.
It's a cool little moment right there.
I set you on this path.
And we knew where it could lead. Walk with me.
That is to say, Anduin let Fang out of the prison in Stormwind. And they had discussed, they knew well enough that doing this, going against Sylvanas' will, could result in what is about to happen. Now, did Fang have to make this choice? No. They could have just tried to fight. But remember, the whole idea was, perhaps instead of maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of lives being lost, maybe today, just one would be enough.
The rest of the way.
And what an incredible thing for Anduin to do. Take my sword. And remember, this is Charlemagne, an enchanted elven sword gifted to Varian Rin by Jaina Proudmoore. And I will say, I think this sword kind of reflects the soul of its wielder, because when Varian held this sword, this glowed with a more orange-red kind of vibrance, and I think that was kind of more hinting towards the heart of a warrior, a heart filled with rage, or a soul filled with rage, and you know, warrior's main resource is rage, right? So it kind of fits thematically in with how we play warrior in the game. But with Anduin, it glows a soft gold, and I think that really is meant to represent the kind of purity of Anduin's soul. And I think that again really reinforces this idea that Anduin, not just as a person and a human, but at the soul level, is a literal beacon of purity and hope. And that is a very, very powerful weapon. Now, when Varrock takes the sword, it doesn't change the color here, so you know that is one thing that's a little bit off about what I'm saying, but I'm not sure. It could be that the sword is tied to the soul of its true wielder and not just who's holding it at the time, but I digress. What an incredible thing for Anduin to do. Take this. Zakan running in. The same way that he tried to do when Fang was walking towards his inevitable doom outside of Lordaeron, trying to chase his honorable death. Zakan comes running, but this time, he's not able to stop Fang. Oh, Sylvanas is scary.
Let it be finished.
So this... Oh, man. I thought this was so fucking cool. Listen, I've never been a Sylvanas fanboy, but dude, this with that little smirk on her face and that little you fucked up kind of look, Fang already knows, Thrall already knows, but what a testament to the power of Sylvanas Windrunner. You have this massive, battle-hardened orc. While he may be old, he is still buff as fuck. Look at him. Come on, this guy's huge. Walks in with a full swing, dude. Fucking instantly stops it, dude. Sylvanas is really strong. I've been trying to say this for a while, too. And a lot of people just completely denied the fact that she is incredibly powerful. She is probably one of the most powerful characters on our planet right now. So, literally playing with Fang. And as you can tell, even though she has these daggers that she could easily plunge into his heart or into the side of his fucking head or something like that, she's choosing to just barely cut him on his skin. I mean, these cuts aren't even... I don't know if it's because of the blade or because her strikes are clearly imbued with shadow, but he's not even bleeding from these wounds. She's cutting him so thinly on his skin. One thing I want to note here, Fang, his skin is mostly green, a little bit of blotchiness with yellow in here, and I want you to pay attention to that because we're going to come back to the color of Fang's skin here in a little bit. But these shadow strikes, I'm going to call them, are leaving this kind of singed kind of almost wound on him, and Sylvanas is literally just playing with him.
The High Overlord falls. I trusted you.
I love this shot too, because couple reasons. One, with what Sylvanas is talking about in regards to trust. It's interesting that Sylvanas would trust anybody, especially someone who is so honor devoted like Fang. It's an interesting thing. Why would you trust someone who you knew would idealistically or ideologically go against what you were going to do? If you know Fang is so honor driven, and we know that, Sylvanas surely knows that, why the fuck would you ever expect to trust him and not go against you? That's such an interesting thing for Sylvanas to say, but also I just love this shot. Just the detail, and this is compressed because it's on YouTube. The detail in Sylvanas' face and her emotion and expression, I just think cinematically, on the CGI level of things, they did an incredible job with Sylvanas.
And so did they. Death comes, old soldier. And all their hope dies with you.
So here we are, with Sylvanas saying, all their hope dies with you. At this point, this is sounding very Legion-esque and very Argus-esque. One of the things that you may remember from Antorus the Burning Throne is the second to last wing of Antorus the Burning Throne was called Hope's End. Okay? Almost as if the Legion was also trying to exterminate Hope because it's such a potent, dangerous force to have to deal with. It's something that's almost impossible to beat if it exists. Not only that, Argus the Unmaker literally saying things like, no hope, just pain. Only pain. Right? Remember at Teldrassil when she went to burn the tree down and the elf told her, you can kill us, but you cannot kill Hope. And Sylvanas says, can't I? So it's very clear at this point that Sylvanas is, for some reason, on a conquest to try to destroy Hope. And what Fang has to say is, for Sylvanas, unfortunately true.
You cannot kill Hope. You tried at Teldrassil. You failed. Hope remains. You set us to kill each other at Lordaeron. You failed.
She's getting angry.
We stand. You just keep failing. The Horde will endure. The Horde is strong.
So, first off, dude, that was cool. Fang, like I said, I'm not a big Fang guy, that was cool. But Fang is right. Sylvanas failed to protect her people. She failed in her conquest to stop the Lich King. While she didn't do it, I mean, obviously we did it. She didn't do it directly. Sylvanas was upset that a new Lich King was crowned after the fact. Sylvanas did fail at Lordaeron to defeat the Alliance and to defeat what came there. She did fail at Teldrassil. Sylvanas has failed again and again. She failed when she killed Calia Menethil, and then Calia Menethil was resurrected by a Naru. Sylvanas, I think, is playing with otherworldly forces, like death, and she's also facing otherworldly forces, like life and light, coming back at her on the other end, and utilizing hope as a way to destroy her. And the thing about Sylvanas is that she's letting, I think, her rage dictate her actions. Her rage and her fear drives her too much. Sylvanas doesn't, I don't think she understands the lessons of Pandaria that you were supposed to learn, like learning to quench your anger and use it as a weapon, but not let it consume you, and to not run away from your fears, but face them, and use that as a conduit in order to surpass your tribulations. The whole thing with Sylvanas is she is far too driven by specific emotions, and it's caused her to fail. So unless she can find a way to overcome said things or find a power that is able to reduce hope to nothing, then Sylvanas will continue to fail. But a couple other things here. We'll go frame by frame. I like how the cut on her face is like trailing off smoke. That is rad. and it's kind of like singed. And when you look closely in the next couple shots, it almost looks like there's like like cinders under her skin where she would normally bleed, but instead it's like embers to a flame. So what she says here next is interesting.
The Horde is nothing!
And the way that the Forsaken here kind of looks over at her is kind of telling. But you can see under her skin here, where the cut is, you can see it's kind of like red cinders, almost as if under Sylvanas' flesh it is just like searing hatred. And I don't even know how to describe it. Sylvanas' eyes have always been red like this since, well, she was turned into what she is now. And the thing about this is I think it's very similar to Gul'dan, who was also driven by hatred and rage. And I think that, once again, the eyes kind of tell a story about the soul. Anguish and suffering that Sylvanas has endured, I think is quite relevant here.
You are all nothing!
So Sylvanas is angry now. Obviously, once again, she's not good at hiding her anger. But when she says here, the Horde is nothing, you are all nothing, and what's coming in the next cinematic will help reinforce this. Sylvanas is talking about a grand scheme here. Not in reflection, or in rather in contrast to her that they are nothing. But what Sylvanas, I think, is alluding to here, and her next couple lines will illustrate this as well, is that the Horde and the Alliance, this conflict that's happening, and how they kind of take their glory and their honor and all this stuff and kind of use it to elevate themselves in a capacity, is nothing. And the grand cosmic battle that's going on here, this in my opinion, apparent battle between life and death, and this cyclical thing that's going on between Sargeras and Argus and death, and the Titans and preservation and life. I think Sylvanas is marginally aware of this, and I think that she's kind of saying all of this is nothing. You're all fucking nothing in the grand scheme of what's going on here. So that's just kind of my interpretation of this. Obviously, Sylvanas is angry. Clearly, but let's hear what she has to say. Absolutely fucking dusted. And I think if there's any testament to Sylvanas' power, it's this right here, dude. What Sylvanas just did to Fang, he literally just got fucking smoked. Now, to this point, first off, look at that angry face. Look at the spell she casts. So the shadow kind of manifests out of thin air in front of her, and she just fucking blasts it at Fang. And this is quite a show of power. This kind of goes to show that not only Fang, she could have fucking absolutely dusted Thrall and Anduin at the same time. But she shoots out this shadow spell, which, interestingly enough, is basically light at the center of it, but shoots it out at Fang. It is traveling as a luminous ball. You could see it literally lights up not only her face, but Fang as he nears it, and it kind of hits him, impacts in this big trail of shadow following behind it, and then boom, this huge explosion, this blinding explosion, really, of energy. This was pretty intense, and behind him you can see there's no Thrall in this shot, but you can see Anduin standing back there. So you have Sylvanas in the shadow in the dust here, then you have Anduin standing over here in the light casting a shadow here, and then obviously Fang just getting fucking eradicated. Interestingly enough, even though this is bright, it is not reducing the shadow beneath Anduin. Maybe just a little cinematic fluff there, I'm not sure. And then it dissipates into this shallow gray thing. Basically, the interesting thing is this didn't actually destroy Fang's body clearly, but it would seem that Saurfang's life essence and or soul is completely fucking gone at this point. I don't know if that's what you kind of see dissipating around his body as this spell, you know, spreads out. But Saurfang is fucking toast at this point. And it's pretty evident immediately that he's dead. And you can hear him burning, actually. On that note, you can actually hear Saurfang's skin burning. He's actually smoking. The thing about this is, when Sylvanas fires that spell, it to me, it kind of looks like fire, like a shadow flame, and I think that's pretty important, because I think flame is well, in my opinion, very important to death in the cycle of things. But again, that's totally different videos. So anyway, he's pretty clearly pretty charred here.
Yourselves as I see you.
Oh, this is important what she says.
If you could see yourselves as I see you. Toy soldiers in tin plate.
And okay, so again, this is my own interpretation of what Sylvanas is saying, but the way that she views us and what we're doing is, as she says, as toy soldiers, you know, kind of masquerading around behind our honor and all of these things, but it doesn't matter. That's kind of what Sylvanas is trying to get at, because once again, on a grander scale, there's more at play here, and I think that hope and this combination of the Alliance and the Horde as kind of warriors to fight against, well, the death that Sylvanas is clearly trying to bring. They're kind of like tin soldiers on the chessboard, if you will, of life and of a greater power. That's how I interpret this. Basically, she sees us in a way that we don't see ourselves. And I hate to say it, but like, I've kind of had the same interpretation as Sylvanas in the past. Again, I will reiterate, I think that the Titans, namely ANR, is basically trying to overthrow the force of death as life. Life is triumphing over death, and in the grand scheme of things, that will turn into something very bad. Immortality to the 10th, to the nth power, and when that happens, I'm telling you, immortality for all living things is not something you want to see, because I think that it inevitably leads to monstrosities like old gods. But again, Sylvanas sees us as something beyond what we are able to visualize, and I think that her goals and what she says again in this next cinematic show that.
Beasts who howl for honor, standing as one.
Oh, and I love the smoke that trails off of her. This again reminds me a lot of N'Zoth. By the way, I said in a video like several months ago that I thought that Sylvanas was working with N'Zoth in some capacity, and that's going to be proven correct in the next cinematic.
Savor it. Nothing lasts.
And she literally just takes off. Saurfang is fucked up. So what Sylvanas is saying there, savor your honor. Savor yourself standing as one, because nothing lasts. And listen, guys, this is fucking dark. I get it, okay? And some people might think it's a little edgy or a little fanboy or whatever. But this is kind of the same premise that Sargeras was functioning off with the Crusade. There's something inherently flawed about what was going on in the cosmos. And because of the existence of death and uncreation, and destruction rather is what I should call it, nothing lasts forever. No king rules forever. Mountains and stone will eventually fall to dust, and all living things will die. Sylvanas is going towards this idea, I think, that through death and through destruction, it is true, nothing lasts. But I think that there's an imminent, more immediate threat that is looming just on the horizon that Sylvanas is scared of. So she floats off, and if you're not a Horde loyalist, we don't know where she goes. Sylvanas loyalist, rather.
What do we do now?
And you can pretty clearly see Saurfang is burned. This is why I pointed out earlier his skin color being green blotched with some yellow. But you can see he's burned. I mean, he has these red marks all over him, and completely lifeless. So my question kind of becomes, where does Saurfang's soul go? Was it destroyed? Does his soul go to the Shadowlands? Does it go to the Halls of Valor because he died as a warrior? I don't know. I don't know if Saurfang was exemplary enough in terms of honor in order to go to the halls or of valor. He basically challenged a suicide mission. I don't know if that counts as an honorable death, but Thrall seems to think so, based on one of the cinematics that you can view after this within Orgrimmar. And then the question also comes up: did Sylvanas cheat in Mak'gora? Honestly, does it fucking matter? I mean, here's the thing. If she didn't cheat, okay, he gets dusted. Sylvanas could have easily killed Saurfang with those blades if she wanted to. But do you really expect Sylvanas to not cheat in something like Mak'gora? I mean, really. Like, does it actually even matter if she cheated? Because ultimately, Sylvanas doesn't give a fuck about honor anyway. She says it right after the battle. You know, clinging to your honor, howling for honor, what she says. But again, you guys know the quote Sylvanas says, honor means nothing to a corpse. So, yeah.
We bring
Who cares? Weird line there, because in the previous cinematic, they said their home was Azeroth. And then Zakan says, what do we do now? And then Thrall's like, we bring him home, and then they take him into Orgrimmar. Even though when Zakan said Orgrimmar in the previous cutscene, he said, no, not our city, our home. So I don't know, it's kind of weird. Yeah, dude, super cool cinematic. Now this here, what Sylvanas said about them all being nothing, I think it's kind of, I mean, Sylvanas could have literally just kind of outed herself, or ousted herself, whatever the word is, against not only all of the Horde and the Alliance, but the Forsaken as well. Because I think that this thing that they're doing with the banners is maybe symbolic of like an honor kind of thing, like we're gonna, even though the Dark Lady is not a fan of you, we're gonna honor you coming in here. Like, we're literally witnessing a King of Stormwind walking into the gates of Orgrimmar with the corpse of a fallen orc on his on his shoulder there with Thrall. So I don't know if that's ever been seen, but this clear joint effort between the Horde and the Alliance, this could prove to be a permanent thing. And I think that we are inevitably drawing towards the reduction of factions. Because I don't think that there's going to be a whole new faction for Sylvanas. I mean, there could be. But it would seem that at this point, we have pretty good reason to be drawn together. And another thing is that, again, as Saurfang said in the previous cinematic, even with 1,000 years of laboring, we would never be able to come together. But perhaps this one moment, this one battle between Sylvanas and Saurfang was enough to bring everyone together, perhaps for the final time. Perhaps there won't be a need to come together again in the future because we will stick together this time. Maybe. A lot of people think that the abolishment of the factions would be bad for the game. I'm going to be honest with you. It really fucking sucks that I can't play with people who play an Alliance. And to have the player base divided like that's pretty unfortunate. Not only that, but I'm tired of the Horde and the Alliance thing, and I think that they could do more interesting things if that were removed. So let's go to the last cinematic here. This is something that's really important for Sylvanas. So if you were a Sylvanas loyalist, you can meet her at Windrunner Spire. This is apparently where she flies off to after that cinematic, and this is what she says. And again, remember, I've been saying for a while that Sylvanas was working in the name of death and was working with N'Zoth and potentially was working with Queen Ashara. I also have been saying that Sylvanas, in the same capacity, is working for the Burning Legion, and I think that N'Zoth has tie-ins with the Burning Legion, even though what Chronicle tells you is counterintuitive to such a point. Again, I think Chronicle's kind of wrong about some things, and I think that it's kind of telling that it can't tell you the origins of the Shadowlands, nor does it ever mention Argus, the Unmaker, Titan of Death and Shadow. So, you know what? I'm going to continue to say this. Chronicle doesn't have all the information. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly lying to you, but it's also not giving you all the information necessary to fully understand the plot at hand. With that being said, again, Deathwing is a very, very important and symbolic link between N'Zoth and Argus the Unmaker, as Deathwing literally calls himself the Unmaker of Worlds, and is an unstable, fiery, magmus dragon of death. I mean, his name is Deathwing, right? And he was given this dark power from N'Zoth, apparently. Come on. There's a clear link between what Sargeras was doing with Argus, trying to bring about the apocalyptic end of all things, right? And what N'Zoth was trying to do with Deathwing. And also the fact that N'Zoth literally got Deathwing to make the Dragon Soul, which was used as a magical conduit to try to summon in Sargeras through the Well of Eternity into Azeroth. The old gods, N'Zoth specifically, wanted Sargeras to come here. If Sargeras' ultimate goal is to eradicate old gods such as N'Zoth, then that doesn't really necessarily make a lot of sense, unless N'Zoth wants to die. And what Sylvanas says in this next cinematic is kind of alluding to the fact that N'Zoth will die.
Ah, champion. I wasn't certain you made it out of Orgrimmar. If the traitors knew of your service to me, they'd have put you in irons. Or worse.
It's interesting that she says or worse as you pass this banshee, as though there are things worse than being put in physical chains or being killed. Maybe becoming a banshee like that exact one in the background is a good example of that.
Fang's ill-considered challenge may have ended the war prematurely, but it doesn't matter now.
So what Sylvanas is saying is she seemingly wanted the war to continue, and the war did end, in her opinion, prematurely, but it doesn't matter because of this.
Countless souls have been fed to the hungering darkness.
What? I'm sorry, what? Souls have been fed to the hungering darkness. So this huge war that's been happening, causing uncountable deaths, those souls are being fed to in a hungering darkness, something that's apparently been starving. Many would attribute that to the void. I'm going to attribute that to Death himself, Argus. I think that we're feeding souls to death, and I think ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, that's probably a good thing. But again, let's continue with what Sylvanas is saying.
Though I cared nothing for the living, I did pity the Forsaken, for the great injustice that made them what they are.
Fair enough, Sylvanas. I can respect that. While I can understand Sylvanas doesn't give a fuck about the living, okay, you're kind of an asshole, but at least she acknowledges that she had pity for the Forsaken. Let's continue.
I understand the cruelty of fate better than anyone.
And you know what? I kind of believe that. I kind of believe that. Trying to save her people from what Arthas did. Being turned into a banshee, being turned into what she is now, bent to the will of the Lich King for a time. I mean, this chick is thousands of years old, and I feel really bad for Sylvanas to an extent. She's had one of the most tragic storylines, if not the most tragic storyline in the history of World of Warcraft, and it's kind of turned her into, well, what she is now. So.
But despite all I taught them, they stubbornly clung to hope, to life.
So that's an interesting thing, that's important, because Sylvanas is making a connection here. Not only does she believe that they were stubbornly clinging to hope, but that hope is correlated to life. That's interesting. Remember, because when we died at the seat of the Pantheon fighting Argus, and Aman'Thul's like, after all we have endured, it must not end this way. And Aeonar goes, hope is not lost, High Father. The spark of life still flickers within these mortals. And so Aeonar made room for healing. She made room for something that was impossible, like Kalia Menethil, who was resurrected by a Naru, said as well. Where hope exists, you make room for healing for all things that are possible and some that are not. But here's the kicker. In that moment, Aeonar resurrected us, and life overcame death once again. And I'm not going to lie, man, that's kind of scary because life is not supposed to overcome death. There's supposed to be a balance between the two. I think Sylvanas understands that. And basically what Sylvanas is getting at is, they're clinging to hope and life. And Sylvanas is pretty sure that she's going to be able to get rid of that. How is Sylvanas going to do that? Oh, listen to this.
They will learn the truth, along with all the rest.
So what she's saying here, they will learn the truth. What is the truth? What is the truth about hope and life? I would guess that what Sylvanas understands as the truth is that hope and life is a facade. Hope is a mask. Hope is a something that will falter in the end. However, I'm not so sure that it will. But the truth I think she's referring to is the truth of shadow, which is something that N'Zoth also refers to, I believe, back in the Crucible of Storms. When N'Zoth says, at last, when you die, he says, at last, embrace the truth of shadow. Listen to this.
My bargain with Ajara will yet bear fruit.
So she did make a bargain with Ashara, however, it hasn't paid off directly yet. It will.
The armies of Azeroth will fight her master.
And Ajara's master, obviously, is N'Zoth. We will fight N'Zoth. This could be an 8.3.
And he will line their streets with corpses.
So that's an interesting thing to say there. That's almost to say that N'Zoth is going to come to us. He's going to line our streets with corpses, our dead. Then this is so important, these next lines.
In the end, he too will serve death.
In the end, he too, N'Zoth, will serve death. Wow. To me, that is a big statement, because as I've been saying for a long time, Argus the Unmaker is death. And N'Zoth, I don't think is like the other old gods at all, if he actually really even is an old god directly. With N'Zoth's connection to Deathwing, who has a connection with the Legion, N'Zoth's connection to the Nightmare, who has a connection to the Legion through Xavius. There are very clear connections and allegiances between specifically N'Zoth, not all the old gods, just N'Zoth and the Burning Legion. And after N'Zoth apparently comes and I assume eradicates our hope and lines our streets with the dead, N'Zoth will also serve death. And that may be in the form of N'Zoth dying and thus serving death, or by causing massive death and destruction, serving and bolstering the strength of death. The reason why this could end up being a good thing, which is this is where I lose people, is that N'Zoth may understand the duality between creation and destruction. You cannot have only one, and there must be a balance between the two. Here's what I believe. The Titans don't believe in such things. They are blinded by arrogance and pride, and they see only the creation and preservation of living things as the good thing. They refuse to accept the natural duality of creation and destruction, and thus they do not treat Argus as an equal to them. And what I think will inevitably happen if we don't stop what's going on is Azeroth, which I believe is in a prison, by the way, I think this world is a prison, will continue to be in a prison, and the Titan Aeonar, who I believe has asserted complete dominance over the Titan Pantheon, will reign supreme, and all living things will never die again. That is a much harsher fate and crueler fate than what Sylvanas is proposing. The death of all things, whether it is all at once or a trickle down, is inevitable, and to deny such fact is absolute ignorance. That is completely ridiculous. Living things will die, and yeah, it's an unfortunate truth about the cycle, but that's how cycles work. And like I said, when we all die, There will be more to see on the other side, something that will likely reveal a great truth to us in the same way that it was revealed to Ashara.
Enough reflection. There are preparations to be made. Nothing lasts. When next you see me, you will understand.
So Sylvanas is basically saying, nothing lasts. Sylvanas is saying, I have helped to orchestrate the release of N'Zoth. N'Zoth will come. He will conquer. He will destroy. He will devour. And in the end, N'Zoth will serve death as well. In the end, death claims us all. And there are quotes from other characters that very strongly hint at what Sylvanas has been doing. For instance, Gul'dan. In the end, death will inherit this world, and she will be waiting. Yeah, talking about Sylvanas, if you ask me. How about Pyromancer, right? When your holy places burn, when your thrones run red with betrayal and the shattered mask hangs above your hearth, only then will you know. And it will be too late. It matters not. You are blind to the true darkness closing in around you. And it is closing in. And Sylvanas is part of the reason for which it is happening. Big storyline hints. And again, and before the storm, when Sylvanas holds Azaret and realizes that this will change everything, she felt not as a goddess of creation, but as a goddess of creation and destruction. Azerite is not simply the blood of Azeroth, but also that of Argus. And a grand truth and revelation is coming. And what the Titans are potentially doing with Sargeras up there, not good. So again, to reiterate the entire idea, the Titans have lied, they have schemed, they have been overthrown by one of their own. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. And it will lead to the inevitable consumption of the universe by the Void because of their own arrogance. The Void clearly does not like Sylvanas. Why does that make sense if Sylvanas is inevitably working towards the ends of N'Zoth? Working for death. Shadow being her abilities, things being tied to death, decay, and disease, right? Think of Death Knight spells. Think of some Shadow Priest spells. There is a clear differentiation between Shadow and Void, and Sylvanas is on the side of Shadow, which I believe is related to death and not Void. The cosmology map in Chronicle is fucking wrong. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to continue to say that. What I've been shown in the game is proof enough of that point. But I digress. This video is an hour long. So I appreciate you guys very much for watching this. If you enjoyed, please do leave a like and hit the subscribe button, because I plan to do more like this in the future. And anything about Sylvanas, Shadow, Death, and N'Zoth gets me fucking hyped. If you guys don't know, I do have a Twitch where I stream occasionally, twitch.tv/Pyromancer. There'll be a link to that in the description below. Please go follow me there. I'd appreciate that. And I also do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Pyromancer, where you can throw a couple dollars my way, $5, $10, $20, whatever you want to do, $1 every month, and support my content, and it helps me pay the bills. So with that, I'll leave you with one last thing. That's twitter.com/PyromancerSarg. I'd appreciate if you guys go follow me there. I tweet quite a lot about lore stuff. I get a little bit heated, so pardon me if I'm an asshole sometimes. That's just kind of how it is, because I care a lot about the lore of this game. That's it. I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace!